The date is April 2nd, 1989. The air inside the Atlantic City Convention Hall, adjacent to Trump Plaza, is thick with a volatile mix of anticipation and the feral roar of 19,000 rabid fans. The spectacle before them is WrestleMania V, the pinnacle of the World Wrestling Federation's golden age. And there, striding down the aisle, a man walks who embodies everything the audience loves to hate: Bobby the Brain Heenan. He's a vision of smarmy, opportunistic villainy, a picture painted in cheap satin and expensive cunning. His hair, perfectly coiffed, catches the harsh glare of the arena lights, making him look less like a human and more like a predatory weasel. A nickname he now wears like a badge of dishonor and pride. Tonight he's managing ravishing Rick Rude, a chiseled narcissist whose arrogance is only eclipsed by his physique. Rude is facing the behemoth, the seismic force of nature that is the ultimate warrior. For the Intercontinental Championship, Heenan is at the absolute apex of his craft, arguably the most despised, yet undeniably the most effective manager in the entire industry. His very presence oozes contempt for the crowd and an unwavering belief in the cheating, dastardly men he guides. For 5 years in the Federation, Heenan has been the architect of villainy, managing the likes of Big John Studd, King Kong Bundy, and Andre the Giant, the latter of whom he steered to the main event of the immortal WrestleMania III against Hulk Hogan. Yet, through it all, Heenan has been relentlessly mocked by his broadcast foil, Gorilla Monsoon, for never managing a champion. Tonight is his obsession, his final answer to the endless stream of insults. The bell rings, and the match is chaos. Warrior goes for his signature splash, but Rude counters with his knees up. The tide shifts. Rude follows up with a series of power moves, from a back-to-belly piledriver to a jawbreaker, and the champion is reeling. But in the world of the Federation, a Heenan-managed client never relies on mere athletic superiority. As Warrior attempts a powerful suplex, Heenan, the master opportunist, lunges. In a flash of royal blue and pure evil, Heenan grabs Warrior's leg from outside the ropes, yanking it out from under him. Warrior crashes, and Rude falls on top of him. Heenan, still holding the leg, uses his full weight to leverage the pin. The referee's hand slaps the mat 3 times, and it's over. Rick Rude is the new Intercontinental Champion. Bobby Heenan has finally done it. He has managed a champion in the Federation, and he did it in the most quintessential brain way possible: by cheating in plain sight. An enraged Warrior eventually hauls the slippery manager back into the ring and delivers a cathartic, bone-jarring gorilla press drop. But the damage is done. The belt is around Rude's waist, and the victory belongs to the Brain. This moment, this pinnacle of triumph and villainy, is the image of the man at the top of the wrestling world, the smartest man in the business. Yet the victory is a fleeting illusion against the brutal reality of time. How does a man so quick-witted, so dominant, so full of venom and vital energy, ultimately fade from this brilliant spectacle? How does this managerial mastermind, a man who built his career on having the last, loudest word, end up broken and silenced? The story of Bobby Heenan, born Raymond Lewis Heenan, is a tragic epic of a lifelong devotion to the squared circle that gifted him fame, fortune, and friendship, only to eventually strip him of his health, his livelihood, and the very voice that made him a legend. Heenan was born on November 1st, 1944, in Chicago, Illinois. He was a child of necessity. His formal education ended abruptly in the 8th grade, forcing him to drop out to help support his family. But from an early age, Heenan was captivated by professional wrestling. He started in the business not as a performer, but as a devoted grunt, carrying bags and jackets for the wrestlers and hustling concessions at events. It was in 1965, with Dick the Bruiser's Indianapolis-based World Wrestling Association, that Heenan began to truly forge his identity. He became Pretty Boy Bobby Heenan, and though he claimed he was never formally trained, his natural athleticism and ability to take a spectacular bump quickly made him a natural on-screen personality. His success in the promotion, particularly in managing Blackjack Lanza, propelled his career forward. His managerial evolution continued in the late 1960s when he arrived in the American Wrestling Association. Here, in 1969, he became the Brain and soon found himself managing the elite, most notably the cerebral Nick Bockwinkel and Ray the Crippler Stevens. It was during their feud with the Crusher and Dick the Bruiser that Heenan's ultimate nickname was born. Bruiser famously dubbed him a weasel, a tag that would follow him affectionately for the rest of his career. The company saw the birth of the Heenan family, a stable that at times included Bockwinkel, Stevens, and Lanza. Heenan's strategic brilliance was confirmed when Bockwinkel secured the World Heavyweight Championship in 1975. Heenan became the first manager in history to simultaneously manage a major promotion's singles and tag team champions, cementing his status as the gold standard for wrestling managers. The transition to the World Wrestling Federation in 1984 marked Heenan's entry onto the grandest stage of his career, aligning him with Vince McMahon's national expansion. He quickly found his stride managing his friend Big John Studd in his feud against Andre the Giant. The highlight was the infamous $15,000 body slam challenge at the inaugural WrestleMania. Heenan was immediately an integral part of the narrative, an active participant in the crime. The Heenan family swelled to include a roster of high-profile villains, including Paul Orndorff, King Kong Bundy, Harley Race, Hercules, the Islanders, and Rick Rude. Heenan became the chief anti-Hogan tactician, managing both Bundy and, most critically, Andre the Giant to challenge Hogan in the main events of WrestleMania II and the record-shattering WrestleMania III. Heenan's managerial run became a trophy case of success in 1989. After Rude's Intercontinental victory at WrestleMania V, Heenan added the World Tag Team Championship to his mantle, guiding the Brainbusters and later the massive Colossal Connection to title reigns. He followed this up by leading Mr. Perfect to Intercontinental Championship success, proving his unparalleled ability to elevate talent. Beyond his management, Heenan's in-ring work, though sporadic, was a highlight. He was a masterful seller, taking absurd, cartoonish bumps that made his wrestlers look like world beaters. His weasel suit matches against the Ultimate Warrior were spectacles of comedic abuse, culminating in the ultimate humiliation of being forced into the eponymous costume. However, a serious neck injury suffered years earlier began to limit his in-ring activity. By the early 1990s, Heenan began a gradual transition, moving fully into the role where he was perhaps most beloved, color commentator. It was in the broadcast booth, paired with his longtime real-life friend, Gorilla Monsoon, that Heenan achieved a different kind of immortality. Heenan became a self-styled broadcast journalist who never met a rule-breaker he didn't praise, or a fan favorite he didn't lambast. Their on-screen repartee was the stuff of legend, a beautifully choreographed blend of Monsoon's exasperated "Will you stop?" and Heenan's quick-witted rebuttals. Heenan's insults were brilliant, calling the audience humanoids and constantly cheerleading for blatant cheating. Their chemistry was so magnetic that viewers tuned in as much for their interactions as for the matches themselves. By the end of 1993, the physical wear and tear of a punishing career, coupled with the exhausting Federation schedule, led Heenan to decide to retire. His on-air farewell on the December 6, 1993 edition of Monday Night Raw was a legendary send-off. Monsoon, finally fed up, threw Heenan and his possessions out of the arena and onto the street. It was a perfect, humiliating, and fitting end for the arch-heel. Yet after the cameras were off, Heenan and Monsoon shared an hour-long tearful embrace, a testament to the genuine friendship that lay beneath their caustic on-screen dynamic. Retirement, however, proved brief. Lured by a lighter schedule and the promise of health insurance, Heenan joined World Championship Wrestling in 1994, where he once again took the lead color commentary role. He was paired with Eric Bischoff and later Tony Schiavone, continuing his tradition of one-sided, quick-witted commentary. His most memorable moment came during the birth of the New World Order at Bash at the Beach 1996. As Hulk Hogan turned heel, Heenan reacted with genuine, unscripted incredulity, shouting, "Whose side is he on?" He also briefly returned to managing, helping Ric Flair and Arn Anderson against Steve McMichael and Kevin Green, a move that secured McMichael's spot in the Four Horsemen. The WCW run eventually soured due to a negative work environment, and Heenan was released in 2000, mere months before the company folded. He made a final glorious return to the Federation at WrestleMania 17 in 2001, providing commentary for the Gimmick Battle Royal alongside Gene Okerlund, a deeply nostalgic reunion. The tragedy, however, was already unfolding. In January 2002, Heenan announced that he had been diagnosed with throat cancer. The next 15 years were a devastating, heroic battle. The cancer eventually went into remission by 2004, but the treatments, radiation and surgery, took a brutal toll. His iconic appearance was dramatically altered by severe weight loss, and most tragically, his legendary voice was reduced to a hoarse whisper. The quick wit, the unparalleled comedic genius, the man who earned the moniker The Brain and spent his life communicating chaos and charm through the microphone, was now silenced. The physical torment continued. In 2007, he underwent a harrowing reconstructive surgery on his jaw that was unsuccessful, leading to a medically induced coma. For a time, he was forced to communicate only with his eyes. His final years were marked by a series of debilitating falls, a broken hip and shoulder in 2010, another broken shoulder in 2014, and another broken hip in 2016. The man who could take a brutal press slam and pop right back up as part of the theatrical performance was now physically broken. Yet, even in the face of this profound suffering, Heenan's resilience shone through. He was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2004, continued to make sporadic public appearances, and stayed in touch with his legion of fans and former colleagues. On September 17, 2017, Raymond Lewis Heenan, the boy who dropped out of school to support his family, the heel manager who brought wrestling to the mainstream, the comedic genius who defined color commentary, died at the age of 72, surrounded by his family. The cause was organ failure due to complications from the cancer that had tried to silence him for so long. He is universally hailed as the greatest wrestling manager of all time. His ability to draw heat and elevate talent remains the blueprint for all who followed. But the enduring legacy of Bobby the Brain Heenan is not just in the victories and the championships he engineered. It is in the devastating contrast between the cocky, untouchable heel who stood triumphant at WrestleMania V, shouting his genius to the world, and the frail, broken man at the end of his life, his voice a ghost of its former glory. He was the smartest man in the business, and his story is a poignant reminder that even the greatest villains can become the most tragic heroes, sacrificing their very self, their voice, their health, to the spectacle they loved. He delivered his last word not as a defiant shout, but as a quiet, final curtain call on a life that was lived entirely and passionately for the humanoids. May he rest in peace,